Well, let's continue to get more tributes from people who have worked closely with Dr Madosini. Her most recent performances was at the Ingoduko concert at the Artscape Theatre from the 29th of September to the 1st of October 2022. The concert featured works of indigenous or bi-indigenous, contemporary as well as international artists. Madosini was also part of Mzansi Sings, a tribute to Oliver Tambo as well as a Madiba concert in the Netherlands with Dr Jessica Mbangeni. She's also performed at the Poetry Africa Festival in Durban and conducted workshops in schools and tertiary institutions around KZN. She joins us now in studio to tell us more about Dr Madosini. I always say that it is such a privilege to be in your company, Dr Jessica, and welcome this morning. Let's talk a little bit about this musical icon. And every time I look at her and I look at the likes of yourselves, I think about the spirituality of music that we never talk about how how much spirit is involved in the creation of the art. A very good morning.
A very good morning to you, Nkosazana Mhlophe. It is a great honor for me to come and give my tribute to my dear legend, my friend, that I never felt that she was actually close to 100 years. Mama Madosini encompassed great spirits, the orchestra of our ancestors, her knowledge, her wisdom, the muse that were keeping us together as we were collaborating in these big platforms internationally. I worked with her through Mzansi Sings tribute to Oliver Tambo and traveled across the world. And our communication and conversations were off stage most of the times, where she would tell me about the gift that was behind umkhube, istolotolo, no hati, whereby women, married women, were not allowed to play.
Sure.
So she was one of a kind that she had to have a disease that was one in millions that affected her leg when she was at her teenage stage. And she was at the best in playing ohati, and that's where she was taken to hospital, and only in hospital when she would ask for istolotolo from her mother to the pain would go away. So that tells me ukuba breathing, our bodies heal ourselves. She was the healer, and she traveled across the world healing the people with her music. That's the what you call the uniqueness of our muse, whereby I heal through poetry. And she would say, you know what, Jessica, when you stand over there, and she was not speaking English, so you can't even translate that in English, but she would say, you evoke my spirit, you evoke my muse. I wish we could collaborate. And she even gave me the ohadi, stolotolo, and umkhube as the gift, and she taught me. As she was teaching me, I felt good, this is the journey, because it is a healing journey. There is something that is called lymphatic blockage. I discovered that most of the musicians, most spiritual people, are suffering from that because we are oppressing the gift that we carry, and then we take people's pain instead of healing them and giving out this energy and also circulate this energy through ourselves. So as you were seeing her limping, it was because of the time she discovered the gifts that she carried.
Sure. You know, I worry, and I'm sure you'll be able to articulate to this, and it was a point that we were stressing within our previous conversations with Dr. Blakey as well, that this kind of awareness and consciousness to music, that it's not just about instrument, it's not just about beats, it's about the effect and the impact that it has on the greater communal discourse, that it's not being carried by the younger generation. It would be a travesty to know, Dr. Jessica, that you are the last of the kind in South Africa, or that Mama Madosini was the last of her kind in this country. You know, we're speaking a little bit earlier on to the Artscape CEO, saying that this particular notion was passed on to a younger generation, or a younger lady called Tandeka. But this kind of passing on happens at a very higher level when it comes to education. Sometimes when you're doing your masters or in higher education and training, but how much of it is needed at a basic education, at a wider spread motion, so that you don't become the last of South Africa.
We've got a young man called Luyolo Lenga, who is right now established the Academy of Indigenous Knowledge Systems in the Eastern Cape. So the younger gen is taking this to the younger generations. It's all because our systems and the grants that are supposed to be funding such workshops, because this has to be not really formal. It has to be something that people are discovering themselves within it.
Yeah.
And the cost of living is too high. It's difficult for us just to sit and engage with Imbongi because we've got children to raise and we've got bills to pay. I wish the grants could really locate us, because Mama Madosini wouldn't be able to apply for the grant. She didn't know what the grant is, but she knew there is a funding from the Department of Arts and Culture. So our municipalities, our own mainstream artists should be, business administrators should be able to push this funding so that we can be able to nurture the children at the young age in schools and in our own homes, so that we can have the institutions that are grooming up the children so that when they become musicians, and also music to become a career, we push ourselves and run away from homes because they say there is no career in music. Music plays a huge role in the GDP of our country. So we really need respect from the what you call the lower grades at schools, because schools are and also on the art centers. We need the indigenous knowledge systems to be really taken into higher consideration, so that when people do masters, already they are the master of their own indigenous knowledge systems and also its monetization. So it's a delay when you have to go and study Doremi Vasolatido. Listen, Madosini was discovered by Victor Ndoni, and Victor Ndoni was younger than Madosini, and she traveled the world on 7 seas, and she made her own mark and making her own money. But now she needed to transfer those skills gradually to the grandchildren.
Absolutely. And you know, it also speaks significantly to how sometimes our minds are so colonized that unless our indigenous knowledge systems are packaged by the West, we don't see them as relevant. And so long as our relevance is almost founded upon whether or not the West adopts it, that's going to be a problem, because it looks as though until an American takes our music or until a British takes our music, we don't touch it. Until somebody else from outside of our shores can say, well done, good job, you people.
And it's absolutely wrong, because legends like Madosini, as I tell you, that she performed for Queen Elizabeth. She performed, she contributed on Hong Kong, where Victor Ndonis were writing music for the apartheid regime and also preserving our heritage. Madosini's music has contributed on Quincy Jones and on the international American global stages. And it was by our very own Victor Ndoni. The Mzansi Sings tribute was also an academy whereby the Department of Arts and Culture failed to sustain it. Victor Ndoni was a man of high caliber that they should have entrusted. He fought for this country, and also he contributed on the likes of Makoy Mkhobata, Feya Fakos, to so many people. It was only the era of Minister Paulo Jordan that things were transparent, and the great legendary President Thabo Mbeki, that funds, even then, it was peanuts. We need academies. And we've got people that have got a heart to sustain these academies. It's our very own. It's our own government that is failing the indigenous knowledge systems of our country to be self-sustainable.
Then how do we rewrite the wrongs? Do we need a complete change in government? Do we need a complete change in leadership? Do we need somebody who's actually in the arts, leading the arts?
Right now, I'm going through the book of a professor, who's this, in UJ, the Vice Chancellor, about the 21st century leadership. It has to be a collective effort. It can't be a single effort. We need private sector. to come on board for self-sustainability, to build the infrastructure, digitization, the methods also that excite people, because indigenous knowledge systems feed the fourth industrial revolution.
Professor Chilitsi.
Yes, Professor Chilitsi. So it has to be a collective. So when institutions like Artscape are having such, we must collaborate. The private sector must come on board. Civil society organizations must come on board and make sure that these institutions grow and they collaborate on an international scale, so that the monetization, because we've got royalties, we've got intellectual property in this, because we are the human capital in this. We are the drivers. As much as we've got love and passion for this, but we are the human capital of our indigenous knowledge systems. So I hope from now on we are going to wake up and do something about the legacy of Mama Madosini. It must not fade away like Mama Miriam Makeba.
And it does not fade away when we can continue to play it, right? When we can continue to play her music, where we get to see her music translated. But also it's an indictment on the media industry as well, and being able to say, how then do we start introducing South Africans to all the different types of palettes and talents that exist within the greater South African discourse? That it's not just about amapiano today and everybody plays amapiano, or it's not just about whatever music today and everybody goes along the same trajectory, that we can actually expand our palette of music and our appreciation of music and pay the artists through playing their music.
Yes, and put it on the mainstream. And also categorize it accordingly, so that we can be able to monetize it. Because it's only once in a lifetime whereby you get Black Coffee collaborating with indigenous artists, which was last Victor Ndodi himself. And we need more, because we've got Omama Base who are also playing the harps, and they've got indigenous instruments, they've got indigenous orchestra. So we really need, Rhodes have got this, Artscape have got the knowledge of this. So we really need young people in the mainstream to come and get this music and research and collaborate. And we must open up these archives.
Opening up the archives requires also the Department of Arts and Culture to back it up and also provide the necessary resources. Opening up this kind of mandate requires a Department of Arts and Culture that will say, you know what, we have got a gift, and we've got a gift in the South African citizenship, and we need to be able to support this gift.
I think
I don't know if
the Department of Arts and Culture right now that we have has got no vision to really invest and play its role in growing the arts in this country.
Sure.
It's a hive of money laundering. It frustrates us even when we are abroad. As I'm traveling the world in 7 seas, it pains me that I'm traveling out of my own pocket to have access to the markets. The department, you come back to the Department of Arts and Culture, you submit the report, and then they divert your funding to their own friends. It's painful, and then you see yourself, your name on treasury, that you were funded, your company was once funded. It's a pain in this country. I wish that department could just close off, because it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Victor Ndoni, about John Machigiza, died of heart attacks and stress because they fought for this country. John Machigiza's father is Todd Machigiza, who wrote Masenza Matamsang, which is the song that is going to be played at Madosini's funeral today. Great songs free to liberate our souls and spirit in this country. But that department is not opening up and setting up the cause for the people. It's not playing its role. This new dawn, where Secretary General Fikile Mbalula must speak out and change this setup, because it's not serving us. I am very old for me not to be having anything that is named after me, that I can be able to point and say, I am grooming up poets. They are fading us. Why are they taking the colonial system of fading Jessica, of fading the legends? Why? What we're supposed to be institutions, they're supposed to consult us and say what needs to be done. We submit proposals, but they're being hijacked, and then when somebody follows up, they take that person off.
Have you come to understand who hijacks this? And you're right that it's not fair that an artist such as yourself, who's got even the title doctor in front of a name, should come onto national television and pour out her heart like this at the failure of a government department in being able to recognize and support its artists, and yet we call it the Department of Arts and Culture. That is a travesty. That should never have happened.
It doesn't exist at all. It's the private sector that is able to provide platforms for the artists. That's where Dr Madosini would be meeting over there. And then it's difficult because it's due to the time. We can't always have those fruitful and deep conversations. It is through Poetry Africa, University of KZN, that we would be able to run workshops. And the Department of Arts and Culture is not funding enough these institutions for them to be able to drive. You saw from the pictures that Madosini was teaching children how to play uhati on junior secondary schools, would go to other universities around KZN. Limited funds. We really need to collaborate. These institutions that have got interest in sustaining the indigenous knowledge systems, they have got the database of the schools in their provinces. This can be piloted, and it must be the integrated developmental model that we should look at, so that the artists do not die paupers today. Madosini was given another day an RDP house, a legend. I said, absolutely no, I refuse. Because she's supposed to be earning royalties, but who's taking those royalties?
What are we going to learn? I just want to give you a little bit of tissue, if I may. But what lessons can we learn? I think you've provided us with such a sobering moment that when we are honoring this legend, when we are talking about her contribution to the musical industry, both in South Africa as well as globally, that we're talking from a place of rewriting some of the wrongs that we take collective responsibility, or we should be taking collective responsibility from. But what do we need to learn here? What are the biggest lessons, not just for government, but for South Africans? Because as I said in the beginning, that it would be a travesty, Jessica, that there's only one of you and that others cannot exist because nobody was there to recognize and continue the legacy.
We need to be involved as South Africans in the development of the LED, the Local Economic Development Plan. We must be active. We must not be imposed a manifesto. But Tina, we must create our own manifesto, because the manifesto that is prioritized with its own tripartite interests, it's not, it doesn't look at, it doesn't do consultative processes. So Tina, as the communities, we know the what you call the strength, and also the talents and the gifts, the skills that we have, and that needs to be acquired. We must really emancipate our own selves and go to the administrators, because government is an administrator of our own governance. So we should not turn this around and be the ones that are begging. We should be telling them, good, this is what we want. We did that during the lockdown at the what you call National Arts Council, led by Sibongile Mngoma. We are doing that, but our own communities turn around, because now we end up being numbers, and we are supposed to be a collective effort. And there is nothing wrong with people when there is when they reject and call the police. That should not what you call offend us, that we are rebels. We are the freedom fighters. We are fighting for our own liberation of our own economy that we possess as the people, because the arts is one of the economies, or the minerals in this, the commodities in this country, that is still not yet regulated. We need to regulate it by our own selves. You know the talented child in your next door neighbor. So give that opportunity, and also create a network. We are doing that, and we should do it more.
Dr. Jessica, I wish I could spend the day with you, but much appreciated for your insights, much appreciated for the vulnerability within which you've approached this conversation. As I said, it's a travesty to know that somebody of your caliber has to come on national television and cried and poured out her heart because she does not want the music to not live on. So I think it's an indictment on us to be able to rethink, reflect, and more than anything else, do something to change it if we don't like the current status quo. Much appreciated.
Thank you ever so much. And please have indigenous knowledge, what you call artists, to come. Morning Live must come back again and give us those platforms we really need, and they are really they add value in our lives.
Well, we're going to take a break with Dr. Jessica Mbangeni. Of course, we're going to return very shortly. Do stay with us on the South African Morning.